how a designer establishes a connection between the brand owner and the end consumer, meaning the people who see the designs for themselves.
You're just creating something that looks very great in your screen, but when it comes to real applications in real life, it doesn't work.
How do you establish that sense of practicality within the brand consumers?
Some people are very sensitive, call them high vibrators. You go and work on the concept and you come back and the client is like, what is it?
Hello everyone, I'm Pratyush and you're listening to the Underdog Protagonist. This podcast is for those who want to take ownership of their lives. Today I'm joined by a great brand designer, Selma, whom I met through Instagram and is a very close friend to mine. I have been loving her work since I have started following her, and here we are in a podcast together. Before we get into, Selma, hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Can you briefly talk about what you do, who you are, just for the listener to have a context about you and your work to do?
So I'm Selma, as you said. I'm a brand designer. As a person, I'm into art, and then I wanted to turn my art into business, and then I tried to start, learning design, and then turn into a designer. And now it's my love of life.
Awesome. I know we have spoken a bit about designing for an impact. Just wanted the audience to have a brief idea on where we are heading towards. But before that, can you just briefly explain about how a designer establishes a connection between the brand owner and the end consumer, meaning the people who see the designs for themselves or have a end touch point with the brand's collaterals?
Design is not like a very technical thing. You need to be a very compassionate and understanding and sympathetic. You should know how to understand people, how to communicate. You need to understand business. You need to have a lot of knowledge about a lot of stuff. The more you know, the better a designer you are. The first step to be a good designer is to be able to understand both sides, the business, their competitors, their audience, and the way you have to translate and communicate the message, the goal to the audience.
Correct. So firstly, you need to know your stuff. You need to understand the market, you need to understand your customers, and you have to be a clear communicator, and then you need to translate everything to follow what you want. I feel most of the people who have gone through your design and how you shape a brand's logo, how you shape a perception of a brand's image, the first perception that comes into our mind is very strong. It should be strong, right? So that is what we want the brand to be impactful enough. When you're preparing a logo or devising a strategy for a brand, what are the key factors responsible to shape that strategy or shape a brand in order to make it that impactful?
So when you're talking about that strength and that, impact that you're aiming to create in your audience and that strong connection, the first thing is to know who you are as a brand, as a business. Mostly that's very cliched, but your mission, vision, and stuff like that. But knowing who you are and what you're doing here and why are you doing what you do is really important. That clarity is the real power, is the real deal when it comes to branding. Many brands are just jumping into the design phase without even knowing who they are and what they do, what makes them different, and what's the story that they want to tell to the world. At the end of the day, what's the goal of the whole thing that they are doing? Shape a story based on those core stuff and try to translate that story into visuals and all those touch points that you have and create a holistic experience rather than having a beautiful logo and beautiful colors. And when you say a strong branding, it's not about visuals.
So we need to be empathetic with the audience. We need to know what they feel and how they feel about a certain product or a certain niche, so that we are kind of being relevant to what they desire from a certain brand, right? Let's say I'm a designer and I want to ensure that the designs that I'm making has some sort of meaning, right? So do you follow a certain set of strategies before going in depth into designing stuff so that that meaning is established?
You need to understand what the challenges are, how they see the world, how they perceive the world, how they perceive their problems, their business. Then understanding the audience and see what is their perception of the world, how the world is shaped for them, what colors they like, what is their visual language, what is the human needs, their psychological needs. Some people are very sensitive. Some people call them high vibrators. They are very sensitive to things like feel, touch. So we need to know that if our audience, for example, are high vibrators, so we need to consider that when branding. Sometimes it's not the case. Our audience are not really into that. They're not high vibrators. Black means something to you, but means something else to me. As a designer, I need to understand your perception of black and my perception of black. And I need to see that difference. I need to understand that difference, not be biased on some general rules that are out there, quick templates that are out there. For example, black means dignity, but it's not the case all the time. Sometimes black means death, sometimes black means money, and it all depends on your audience and the business.
So it's not always about how creative you are, how your designs look, how it is perceived, right? It also needs to be a bit more practical. And that intersection between innovation and practicality should be established, right?
So of course, design needs to be practical. It's actually something that is going to work. If not, it's not design, it's art.
Yeah. But how do you establish that sense of practicality? Because the design needs to be feasible. It needs to have that sort of innovative approach to it. Just because we are creating for an impact, it needs to, have that intersection of practicality, innovation, and feasibility, right? I know it's a curveball, but how do you establish that sense of practicality within the brand consumers?
So when we are talking about feasibility, mostly I can think about that digital product design stuff. But when it comes to visual, it depends on the brand and touch points that we have in mind. Or no, you're just living in your dream and you're just creating something that looks very great in your screen. But when it comes to the real applications in real life, it doesn't work because you haven't considered the real touch points and the real life applications of the brand.
Every time we design for a certain brand, or even if we are creating a brand from scratch, this always a bias that comes into our mind. We kind of see a brand moving towards a certain direction. We feel like this is what the brand should look like, right? What are those challenges that you have encountered? And can you let us know along the way how you have, overcome those challenges?
So most of the challenges arise from miscommunication. Sometimes it's really inevitable. Point you realize that it's inevitable. And the thing that I do is to learn my lesson and move on. See, like, okay, I didn't see that. For example, our values are, let's say, they are sustainability. It's a very cliched example, but they talk about sustainability, and you both think that you know what sustainability means, but when you go and do the work and come back to the client, then you realize, oh, this is not what they had in mind when they talked about sustainability. Yep. So everything they say, it's really important to ask more and more questions. Go deeper into what they talk about. Okay, they say sustainability is important for us. Okay, what sustainability means to you? Words can have different meanings for different people. So make sure that you're both on the same page when you're talking about some concepts, some values, some words, anything, adjectives even. For example, they're talking about the playfulness. Yeah, you think that you know what playfulness is, and you take it for granted. You go and work on the concept, and you come back and the client is like, what is it? I didn't talk about this. Okay, you need to make sure that you ask enough questions. A lot of questions, not enough, until you are both on the same page. Assume that you know nothing and everything is new to you. So, even about colors, you say green, but what kind of green are you talking about? We need to be clear. There are thousands types of green in the world. What type of green are you talking about?
I think when it comes to communication, you have to take a slower approach towards it. You don't need to rush to things, because between that rush, a lot of things are left unspoken or unheard of. That kind of messes up with your approach and where you want the project to head towards, right? That also brings us towards certain type of clients, right? They don't allow us to have that sense of transparency between us. They just like, hey, can you help me do this? These are my requirements, and like these are my final expectations, right? They just set the expectations and they vanish. And I believe this is one of the red flags that clients can possess. And that brings me to this question, like, what are the uncommon red flags that you have encountered that we should be wary of when approaching or when talking to a client?
I would say a client looking to hire someone to execute their ideas. They are not open to discussions, open to communications. They already have a brief and they come to you to execute what they have in mind. I'm all about solving a problem as a designer. I'm all about finding new solutions to their challenges. So if they already have an answer and they want me to execute their idea, oh no, it's not for me. I really need to work on that problem and see it from different perspectives. Maybe that the solution they have in mind is not the right one.
Awesome. We are almost at the end of our segments. We have talked a lot about the downsides and the challenges, the red flags, all those bits. But on the flip side, I also want to discuss the ups, the positives of designing for an impact, right? And this boils down to why are we doing what you're doing, right? Can you tell us a bit about that?
So the first answer that comes to your mind, it makes me a better person, being a designer. Design for an impact is something that is you're repeating two words with the same meaning. Design needs to be impactful. You can't have a design without an impact. If it's not changing something to the better, it's not a design. It's, as I said, it is a very holistic concept. Being a designer, you need to be knowledgeable of a lot of stuff at the same time. You see that visually as well. You're creating something that makes life better, and you're creating something that solves a problem, and that's very fulfilling for me. And it was a good question. Thank you.
Oh, it's all my pleasure. Thank you so much, Selma, for joining us in this podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the end. I hope you found this conversation a bit insightful and informative at the same time. Stay tuned for all these thought provoking sessions in the near future. I'll give links to Selma's socials and mail down in the description for you to go and connect with her. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, take care.